But right now, one person has called this book, and we're about to speak to the author here in a moment. He calls it The Joy of Freedom. John Stossel, who you see on the Fox News channel sometime, has called it an eye-opening book. We're talking about a book called Defending the Undefendable. It's written by economist Walter Brock. And John writes, we grow up learning that some things are just bad. Child labor, ticket scalping, price gouging, kidney selling, blackmail. But maybe they're not. Well, let's find out. Walter Brock, the economist, now joins us on the Rod Arquette Show on this Monday. Walter, how are you this afternoon?
Hanging in there, and thanks for having me on your show.
Well, thank you for joining us. Walter, give me the premise of this book called Defending the Undefendable.
Well, the premise of the book is libertarianism. So you might ask, what is the premise of libertarianism? And the premise of libertarianism, I think, is twofold. One is the non-aggression principle. Namely, libertarianism says that it should be, the law should limit itself to prohibiting people from grabbing other people or their property. Keep your mitts to yourself. You can do anything else you want between consenting adults, but do not aggress against other people. The second part of it is property rights, because if I'm to keep my hands off of you and your property rights, I have to have a theory of what is mine and what is thine. And here libertarians go along with John Locke, homesteading, and Robert Nozick, trade and voluntary interactions. So that's libertarianism. The book is predicated on that, and what the book says is that there are certain people, the ones you mentioned, blackmailers, people selling kidneys or prostitutes, whatever, who do not violate the libertarian axioms, and yet are hated or reviled or prohibited by law, and I'm defending them.
Well, let's go through some of this stuff. I mean, you defend child labor.
Yes.
Why is child labor good?
Well, child labor nowadays isn't good. I don't say it's good. I say that child labor laws are bad, and there should be no law against it as long as the parent is not engaging in child abuse. Look, if we had child labor laws in the 15th century, what would have happened to the children? They would have died, because the 15th century people were so poor that they needed children to work, otherwise they would have starved. Well, if we impose child labor laws on certain parts of the world right now, Bangladesh, parts of Africa, those children will starve. There have been studies that show that when you put child labor laws into effect, you can't work on a factory making sneakers, they go into child prostitution, which I certainly do not favor. So, you see, the reason we don't have child labor now is not because of child labor laws. Child labor laws are evil. The reason we don't have child labor now is because we're rich enough to afford to not have children work.
Talk about ticket scalping. How is that beneficial?
Well, you might ask yourselves, why don't, ordinarily, let's say before the Super Bowl, you get an ordinary football game, and I don't know what the price of a ticket in the nosebleed section.
I think it's like $375, believe it or not.
Well, that's not during the Super Bowl. Let's say an ordinary game, $100.
Yeah.
And now you have the Super Bowl, and the price goes up, say, for even numbers, to $500. That is the price where supply meets demand. So why don't they raise the price to $500? And then we wouldn't have any ticket scalping. I mean, you don't have scalping of bubble gum or shoes or anything. That's because the prices are set where supply. But the reason that they don't set the prices at market clearing prices is because they're afraid of being called price gougers. And price gouging is evil. We had in New Orleans after Katrina shortages of everything under the sun, and prices rose. And they're a signal to bring stuff into New Orleans. And yet the governor of Louisiana had a law against price gougers. So the reason that the opera stars or the rock stars better or the sports teams don't raise their prices is they're afraid of being called price gougers. And price gouging is, the opposition to it is indication of economic illiteracy. So what they do is they set the price at a very low price, or the ordinary price, where demand is now skyrocketed, and there's vast demand compared to the limited supply of tickets at the stadium. And then it's sort of like you try to push water in a bathtub down. You can't. It'll overflow the bathtub. You try to have these artificial prices, and the natural market process boosts those prices. And who's boosting them? Well, ticket scalpers. They're having rational prices. You see, the economy is based on reasonable prices. The reason the Soviet economy went belly up is they didn't have market prices. So what the ticket scalper is a hero. He is pushing those prices up to where they would be if not for the economic illiteracy, which makes these teams and the sports events chicken out for charging the right prices.
Mm-hmm. Walter, as someone reads your book, what do you want them to come away from with it?
Well, I don't want them to come away and say the only good thing about the book is the cartoons, and the cartoons are very funny, but I didn't write them. I just picked them.
Well, what do you hope someone, after reading this book, what do you hope someone gets from it?
Well, I hope that they get a different view of libertarianism. I mean, most libertarian books aren't like this. Most libertarian books are much more straightforward. What I'm trying to do is take the worst-case scenarios. I'm trying to take the cases where everyone hates, reviles the marketplace, and show that even there, the marketplace, the free enterprise system is a marvelous system, as Adam Smith said. So what I'm hoping people will take away from this book is an appreciation of free enterprise system. What I'm trying not to do is create straw man and say, well, you know, we should privatize the post office. Big deal. What I'm trying to do is tackle much harder issues, the difficult issues, the issues where the marketplace needs defense.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, Walter, thank you. Appreciate your time today.
Thanks for having me on your show.
All right. His name is Walter Brock. He's an economist. He's written a fascinating new book about libertarianism and the economy and what happens in the free enterprise system. It's called Defending the Undefendable.